And what is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I am the host of Beyond the Woodline. Before we get started, real quick, I always have to make these little announcements. For those of you who may not know, I am the executive director for the JRG, which is a Jevning Research Group. It's a Bigfoot research group headed and founded up by William Jevning. We have teams in Washington, Oregon, West Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, New York State, Minnesota, and of course here in Texas. If you guys are interested in joining a team and you know helping us out, research and investigate some of these encounters or sightings, man, I'd love to have you on. Just hit me up at beyond.woodline@gmail.com. We'll get you started. You don't have to go out into the field, once every 2 weeks, once a month, or you can do that at your own leisure and whenever you can. We certainly understand that. And you don't even have to go out into the field necessarily either. You can do your research from behind the computer, your laptop. Um, you can help us find witnesses, find locations, do the history work for us, stuff like that. Or if you have any ideas or suggestions when it comes to doing research and investigations, man, we certainly would love to hear that too. We're always open to listening to other techniques that different people may have or want to try out. But with all that being said, I know you guys don't tune in to hear me ramble on all night long. So I have a special guest with me, Jeni Monroe. Did I say it right, Jenny? I don't know if you go by Jenny or Jeni.
Jenny is good. Yeah, you said it
Okay,
perfect.
okay. Now I'm gonna mispronounce it the rest of the night probably, but
That's fair.
yeah.
You got it
So
once. Well, it counts.
so how are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. I am doing great.
That's good. Yeah, we had a little bit of chance to talk off the air and communicate back and forth. If you don't mind, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what actually got you started into this crazy field that we're in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I've always been, I was kind of raised with a lot of folklore and mythology and all sorts of stuff like that. So I was interested from a very, very young age, and I spent a fair amount of time by myself, kind of out in the country. So looking for things or, feeling things always kind of happened to me. And I don't know if it was just imagination on my end or if there was really stuff there. And I've traveled a lot, and I'm always just so fascinated by cultures, and especially like the myths and the cryptids and things of each culture that I visit. And more recently, I'm now on a podcast called Late Night Legends um, that we stream every Monday and then put out a episode every Thursday. So it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot more exposure to this sort of in a more professional capacity, I guess I could say, over the past year with the podcast, which has been cool.
That's good. What kind of stuff do you guys cover?
We cover just about everything that you could think of paranormal. We talk about cryptids, we talk about ghosts, we talk about mediums. Let's see what else. We talk about some of the myths and legends, a little bit creepier, some of the more unexplained incidents. Places like Dyatlov Pass. My big thing right now is the national parks and all the sorts of missing and unique things that one finds there. They just have all sorts of reports about both paranormal and like missing people who are found in strange places.
Yeah, right. I like listening to all the. Well, I don't say I like it, but it's very interesting and intriguing to listen to these mystery people, the
Mhm.
reports, and just the strange circumstances that a lot of these people find themselves in, or even the circumstances in which they disappeared, and
Yeah.
you know the surrounding circumstances really with that. It just kind of makes you wonder what's going on and what's really going on, and um, if it's something natural or even unnatural. Do you have any
hmm
thoughts on that?
I do. I think it's very, and I've just done tip of the iceberg as far as research, but I believe that a lot of it is very natural occurrences. that just happen to also be supernatural, right?
Right.
So in a lot of places like the national parks, and ruins and just big empty vast spaces or places that have been areas of worship, right? There's a feeling, and a lot of them have the national parks, for instance. They have big electromagnetic sort of pulls, so they have a lot of the minerals. They have a lot of quartz as well, which is strange, but so I think it's very location specific, right? There's a lot of paranormal stuff that happens and a lot of cryptid behavior too around cave systems,
Right.
things like that. So I think that they are naturally occurring places on the planet that perhaps something else is going on, like the veil's a little bit thinner, or there's time slips,
Right.
or there's something in the minerals in that particular area and the way that they converge that makes things occur, or invites that sort of activity.
Right. And one of the things that I always hear people say is like, why does it happen like in these secluded areas or places like national parks, and
Mhm.
why isn't it always happening like in the big cities, right? And I think a lot of that is just because of the overall negative energy that a city has. And I think uh, that kind of prevents whatever's happening in those secluded areas or isolated areas. I think that's part of what happens. And I've always wondered because you do hear about people who will come up missing right in cities or and then just
Mhm.
disappear. So I do think that kind of stuff happens, but not as much as it does in these vast wildernesses where no one ever goes. I just think it's the overall negative energy, whether it's from the people or the machinery and our electronics. You know, so I think
Yeah.
that plays a big part of it.
I mean, a lot of these places are secluded for a reason, right? Several of the national parks, and a lot of parks or archaeological sites, in various places throughout the Americas. There were areas that were spoken about well before our time, right? So the indigenous people of the area either built temples or stayed away from certain areas, or certain areas were considered holy. So I think these places have always kind of been like that, and we've grown up around them.
Right.
There's always sort of been an invisible barrier to a lot of these places. And I
Yeah.
also do have to say that I like the theory that people who were in charge, like Roosevelt, knew about these places and sort of set aside these areas to say, let's just not let's just not tempt it.
Right. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that theory.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true. I think that he did this knowingly, or at least had a really good idea what was going on, or maybe going on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I
know.
mean,
So,
he did have, and I cannot remember the exact story of it, but did he not have a Bigfoot encounter, or someone close to him did, and he reported on it?
yeah, it was I don't know, Georgia, Florida, somewhere in that area. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were out, and I think some of the people he was with actually got killed, if I
Hmm.
remember correctly. Yeah, they had their heads popped right off. So uh, yeah,
It's just popped off.
yeah, yeah. But just like I was saying, the hog that we found with their heads popped off. But there was another story in the Okefenokee swamps. I think that's like in the Georgia, Florida area also, where I think there was like a runaway slave, and the people went after him, and they ran into a Bigfoot, and they wound up popping some of those guys' heads off too. Yeah. So
I mean, it's not funny, but the idea of Bigfoot just running around, I think it's the phrasing of the popping the heads off is,
yeah,
I like that. He just runs around, sometimes pops heads off.
yeah, just popped your head right on off. It's probably like plucking a grape right off the vine for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you ever gone out and done any research, whether it's for cryptids or Bigfoot?
No, I haven't gone out specifically to do any kind of research. One of the things that I love to do, whenever I go any place, I like to go to an adventure, like anywhere outside, some place that has some kind of history. That's where I'll be, but it's not specifically to find anything. Although I
Right.
should really start, but I get so taken by whatever it is that we're doing, you
Right.
know. Um, because I've been in some of the places that are haunted, or some of these places that are holy sites, and there's a vibe there. There's a feeling there. There's definitely something where you feel closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah. No, I totally makes a lot of sense. There's an area in the San Luis Forest that I go researching with my friend Walter, where he had his encounter. And when we go there, you never know what kind of feeling you're going to get. You might just go there. We set up recorders and trail cams, right? We'd set them up and take off.
Mhm.
And there were other times when we go there and it's like you're being watched. You can almost feel the eyeballs hitting you in the back of the head, And
Yeah,
we're like, and we can both feel it at the same time without even talking, telling the other one. It's like, all right, we're being watched, or there's something out here. And yeah,
yeah, for sure.
it's a very spooky area at times. Like I said, sometimes we just go in and like it's like nothing. Like I don't feel nothing. Just like being out there hiking and walking around and you know without a
Right.
care in the world. And then there's other times we go out there and we got our heads on a swivel.
Yeah, I could well imagine. Um, Absolutely. Yeah, I was down in Belize in February, and I visited this cave. It's this archaeological site, and I cannot pronounce the name because I will absolutely slaughter it, but they call it the ATM cave. Okay, it's on the
Okay.
mainland. It's a couple of hours outside of Belize City, but it was a holy place for the Mayans, and I've been there twice now. I've been inside the cave, um, and it's first of all, it's just an amazing sight because you hike into the jungle, you go through a couple of rivers, and then you swim into this cave. And it's not, you go on a very, very small group, and there's not lights, there's not handles or pathways. You're in these caves, and the first time around, nothing. This past time I went though, there was something with us the entire time. Like it was exactly like that. I just felt it right in the back of our group, and it was one of those things where I'm like, all right, we're not gonna hang back too much. I'd love to, but I feel like right now is not the time. And
Right.
I don't know what it was. I don't know.
Did anybody else get that feeling?
Hmm. Yeah, the person that I was with definitely got that feeling as well.
Mhm.
But he's not great with tight spaces, so that might have been it too. Just saying, might have
You
been
know
it.
what? Me neither. Man, I can't do tight spaces at all. I'm not really claustrophobic. I just have a fear of dying in a tight spot.
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
That
I
would
don't want to be trapped. You know,
that would be a terrible place to be trapped.
it's like like I love to swim. I can swim, right? I'm
Right.
not afraid to get on a boat, but I'm afraid to go on a cruise because I'm afraid I'll be in my cabin if the boat sinks and I can't get out.
Okay.
So that's like one of my worst fears is like being trapped and can't do anything. So
Yeah.
like I could never get on that damn submarine. I don't care how safe it is. Like you're not getting me on a submarine to go down. I couldn't do that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think we've discovered that not every submarine is particularly safe.
Right? Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wouldn't want to get on a cruise. I'm afraid to get on a cruise ship because I don't like people. So
Mhm. Yeah.
totally different reasoning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I like I like it. So I like the caves and the
Yeah.
underwaters and all those things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only caves I've been to are the Carlsbad.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, the
like
Carlsbad Caverns.
yeah,
Would you
Carlsbad
did you see
Caverns.
anything?
Yeah. Oh, I love it there.
Yeah.
It's really a cool place. If you haven't tried it, you need to try it.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
slowly but surely checking some of those parks like off my list.
yeah, yeah. Then they have like a couple of cave systems here. There's one in Sonora, Texas, and then there's one that's around San Marcos, New Braunfels area. Also, you take a tour down there. It's pretty cool. It's a smaller cave, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, it originally belonged to a like a farmer, and he dropped like a drill bit down a well. So he was trying to find a way to get inside there, and he wound up finding this cavern underneath his property. So it was pretty cool.
that is really cool. Yeah,
And
I
there's yeah,
so many cryptid sightings and so many things happen around cave systems that it's incredible.
mhm. Yeah. I think that's that I've seen that map where people put up like the Bigfoot sightings, and then they put up the map with the
Hmm.
caves, and they match almost perfectly. You know,
Yep.
I think there's something to that, and there's so many caves that are still undiscovered. You know,
Yeah.
uh, right in San Antonio, within the last year or so, they found another cave system. A guy found it on his property. And it's crazy. It goes on for I don't know how many hundreds of feet. But yeah. There's got to be caves everywhere that people just don't know about. We're
Yeah.
still gonna find out. Uh,
And so many cultures like have caves as like part of their creation myth, right?
right.
So it's where things originate. It's a gateway, so even hundreds of years ago these things were seen as gateways. Like there's places where either the people came to be
Hmm.
from underneath the ground, or that was how they communicated with their gods, or how they put down sacrifices.
Right.
So there is something extraordinarily significant there.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm also afraid of caves, so I'm careful about where I go.
That's fair. That's
Yeah,
totally fair.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see like on you have like on TikTok or even like on YouTube, people who investigate these caves and they go so far back in there. It's like, man, you guys are crazy.
I
You
know.
know?
I
Yeah,
know. I kind of really want to, though.
yeah, yeah. I would need like a super long rope to find my
Just
way out.
tied around your waist. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Tied around my waist. Yeah, because I don't know how these guys do it, man. But and then these cave divers too. I don't know how these guys do that stuff. You get twisted around quick.
Now, see, I love caves and I love scuba diving. I love both of those things. I do not love those things combined. I do not want to do both at the same time. That's quite enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, do you have any favorite encounter stories or that you've heard from regarding Bigfoot or even cryptids for that matter?
Oh, you know what? There's a small little cryptid in Central America, and it starts with a D, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name. But it lures children like across rivers,
Yeah,
and then will carry away the child,
right.
right? So like I said, I was last traveling in February, and I was talking to this guy who is the grandson of a shaman, and he was telling me this story about how when he was a child, um, they had extra caution at one point in time. As a kid, he used to go just kind of hang out in the jungle. His grandparents lived like way up north in Central America, and um, there wasn't a lot to do there. They would just go hang out in the jungle, go see what they were going to see. And there was almost like a lockdown for a period of time because one of the girls from the village had disappeared, and they had seen her wandering down this path, and then they saw her with one of these creatures on the other side of the river. And she was happy and smiling and waving, and then just disappeared. I like that one a lot. That one's my favorite.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy. Yeah, but I've heard of that, and I can't remember what they're called either.
Yeah,
But
I think it starts with a D.
yeah, But I had this friend of mine that I used to work with, when I used to live outside of San Antonio, right in that area.
Hmm.
Um, and he came in one day. I had just started working there, and he came in. He worked the night shift, and he had a shirt with a Bigfoot on it, And so I'm gonna go there and talk to the kid, right? And I say kid, he was probably 25, 26 years old. But I went over there to talk to him. I said, hey man, what's going on with your Bigfoot shirt? He's like, dude, me and my dad, we love this stuff. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, man. He goes, we love watching all the shows. And he says, uh, um, he says that it actually started from his mom because she was from South America, and she would tell him as he was growing up the story of the dinosaurs that were in the river, and they were told as children not to go down there because there was dinosaurs in the river. And the whole village that she grew up in knew that there were dinosaurs down there. But you hear that kind of stuff, and you wonder, were they trying to scare the kids not to go down by the river, or were they telling the truth?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Mhm.
like that a lot. And
Yeah.
that gets into that whole idea of like types and
Right.
what, one of my favorite things about like Nessie, right? Or like any of like the pterodactyl sightings.
Yeah.
I think that that is so easily it's so much more believable for me to believe that it's either one, a time slip, or they find creatures that they thought to have been extinct.
Right.
It's a thing that's happened. So what
Right.
if these were the lone survivors? Like what if there was a small population that survived through the ages and just got smaller and smaller, and these were the last ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
I love
especially like
that
an area.
theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like an area like South America where there's so much forest that is unexplored. Um,
Hmm.
and these villages, they stay to themselves. They don't go out into the public unless they're moving away. Out to the rest of the
Yeah,
bigger civilizations unless they're moving out. Like his mom did. Yeah, so it
yeah,
just makes you wonder. And to these people, that's everyday life for them. They don't necessarily know or care really. That's just part of life, right? You know.
well, we have a perfect example of that, of the and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly or not, but the coelacanth, the fish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um yeah, the plated fish that they thought had gone extinct, and it just so happened that a traveler stumbled into this village and they were eating these things.
Right.
And I think this happened in Africa.
Yeah, it's
um
Africa.
yeah, it was Africa. And they had been he was astounded by this find, and they were like, yeah, we eat these all the time, they're right over there, we fish them.
Yeah,
And so this thing had been around for forever,
yeah, for millions of
and
years.
wasn't yeah, and wasn't rediscovered again until, like, I don't know, 1930s.
Mhm.
Yeah, like, we have those examples right there, you
Right.
know?
Well, the same thing goes for what was it, the panda that they thought was a myth, and
Mhm.
yeah, the guys went out for like 2 months trying to find this creature, and people were like, "Man, you guys are crazy. There's no such thing." And that was what in the 30s, also maybe the 40s,
Yeah.
you know, and even like the mountain gorillas and
Yes.
wh- yeah, and those big chimpanzees. What do they call those big the lion killers?
The
You know,
orangutans?
no, those even
Oh,
taller. Yeah,
the
they
big
they
guys
call
with
those.
the big teeth.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
they thought all that was a myth, and and they come out and find these things. They're like, holy cow, these things do
yeah.
exist. And not only do they exist, but they're thriving.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. They've just been doing their thing, and everybody around is like, "Yeah, we see these things constantly. Mm,
yeah,
this is nothing special."
yeah. Thanks for tuning in, Jeff. We appreciate it. Yeah, one of my favorite stories when it comes to cryptids is the Mike Woolley story. You know who Mike Woolley is? We're familiar with his name. He was in
Probably not his name, but
Louisiana.
if you
He was
start
in.
telling the story, I'll remember it, but I'm very bad with keeping track of names.
He was from Louisiana, and he was in his deer stand, and a doe came up and laid down next to his deer stand, just running. She had been running. She was tired, exhausted, and he figured maybe a big buck was coming after it or something. And then he noticed a movement up ahead. And when he looked, he saw what looked like a big gorilla jumping from one tree behind another tree and was peeping around the corner at him. And he
Yeah.
thought it was someone trying to scare him off his deer stand because he was in public land. And he raised his rifle to get a better look through the scope, and he realized that it wasn't, a man in a costume, that it was a actual living, breathing creature. And then it let out a whistle, and then another whistle a few hundred yards down came back, and that's when he realized that he may be in some trouble. So he jumped down from his deer stand and ran to his truck. I'm telling it really fast. And he ran to
Right.
his truck, and before he got to his truck, because it was running in the woods next to him, he fired a shot off, and it hit the bark and blew bark in its face. And he jumped. He was able to jump in his truck in time, and as he's pulling off, he sees the other one coming up behind him from the road.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no thank you. No
yeah,
thank you at all, but also yes please. Like I
yeah,
wanna see it, but I don't really wanna see it.
yeah, yeah. You kind of want to see it on your terms, right?
Mhm. I talk about wanting to see it all of the time, and then I'll listen to, like, the vocalizations, and sometimes fan they don't sound, creepy at all, but on
Right,
other occasions, it's like that, uncanny valley kind of thing, like, "Oh, that voice is almost human, but not quite."
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm torn. Not like it's being offered immediately to me or anything. It's not like I have to make a choice like, "Hey, do you wanna see it or not?"
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when my friend Walter had his encounter, and this is how I met him. He contacted me after he had his encounter, but he was actually out. He was part of a paranormal team. Excuse me, I was drinking a Coke over here. It got me burping. But I had he went out there with his team um, because they decided to do a Bigfoot thing. They went out to the Sanderson forest, and they were out there, and it's like in the middle of the night. It's dark as hell, and this truck pulls up to them, and the guy's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing out here? I know what you're doing. You're looking for Bigfoot." That's exactly what he told them. He said, "Come on, I'll show you. I'll show you where he's at." And he took them to that area. That's now our research area. Um, and man, they had an underwear changing moment out there. And so that's why we go
Oh,
out there to that
wow.
particular area, and that's where we found the hog. That same area is where we found the
Yeah.
hog. We had found a lot of tree snaps and tree twists, which I had. That was the first time I had ever seen a branch twisted like a dish rag, and it was snapped, and it was crazy. And like so when I posted that picture, people were like, "Well, it had to be from a windstorm, had to be from maybe a big like an 18 wheeler hit it." I'm like, "There's no way the 18 wheeler is going to come down this road." Because I've got a smaller truck, the mid-sized truck, the Chevy Colorado, and it's so
Mhm.
narrow. I'll have brush scraping my truck on both sides, so you couldn't even turn around if you wanted
Yeah.
to. And it's after there's no way 18 wheelers going to come down this road without tearing every single branch off the tree. Um, and it
Well,
wasn't a
yeah, I mean,
windstorm.
first of all, why? Why would
Yeah,
an 18-wheeler, like, go anyplace, but also
yeah,
couldn't fit? And also, like, nothing does that.
right.
Winds
And
don't
it
twist things, like, that's not a thing.
Yeah, and if it did, why that one branch blocking the road?
Yeah,
In because if
yeah,
because where it was at, so when you go down that road, you go into a Walters area where I call it Walters area, uh, and it was blocking the road going into there. Uh, we found the hog there, that twist. We found prints out there. It's a good area to go research. So that's one of my favorite
yeah, it
areas.
sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've captured growls and more tree snaps on audio, or like bark getting peeled off a tree. We've got all that on audio. It's a pretty cool little area. Um, but what's funny was that during all that time, because they got to record, they do have recordings of that episodes of their encounter. That guy's voice never comes out on tape.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when I
Oh,
started telling
that's
people about this, they were like, "No, we've heard that kind of stuff before. We've heard that story before." That where people will like, "Hey, come with me. I'll show you where he's at." And then basically the people get to So you know what scared out of them, and uh, whoever was with them, their voice never comes out on recording.
So what do you think it is? What do you
I
think that the
think
voice is?
I think he was someone who was in the know, if you want to say it like that,
Okay.
um, and maybe he had a device on him or whatever that didn't allow his voice to be recorded. Because shortly after that, when Walter contacted, well, first he contacted Will Jevning, then Will put me in contact. He said, "Hey, he's right in your area. Give him a call." I said, "Okay." Called him up. Right after that, he got a couple of phone calls telling him to shut the hell up.
Oh, interesting. So what do you
Yeah.
think that the intent behind showing just a brief glimpse is?
I think it was probably like, okay, you want to see it? You're going to see it. You'll have the hell scared out of you, and you won't come back. And because Walter didn't want to go back, that was for sure. And
Okay.
and as a matter of fact, none of the none no, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 other people. None of them ever went back or have any interest in going back out there.
Okay. So it's just a cover, sort
Yeah,
of like to keep people away. Interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Now, I do have a question for you. What do you think Bigfoot is? Do you
I,
think one, it's an actual primate running around, or do you think it's something else?
I would have to say I think it's a flesh and blood primate.
Okay.
Maybe just like we're primates, right? Whether
Right.
it's a human or non-human, I don't quite know because there's so much conflicting evidence and reports, right? Some people say, and it really drives me crazy because people are like, well, we got hair samples or blood samples and it came back inconclusive, or we've got hair samples and blood samples and it came back as human. We've got hair samples and blood samples that came back primate. It's like, so you've got all these samples out there, and then sometimes you never even hear the results of some of these samples. But no matter what, you'll never actually see like a physical report. People will
Right.
tell you this is what it is. This is what it came back. Well, you're telling me, and I'm not calling you a liar, but you're telling me this without showing me any proof. You know,
Yeah.
you know, uh, and not that they have to. Because I certainly don't feel like I have to show anybody any proof. But if you're going to make that kind of a statement, show me the paperwork that came back from the lab. You know,
Hmm.
and But bottom line too is I do think there are other things out there besides a flesh and blood creature. I think there are different entities, if you will. I think there are uh, non-terrestrial entities that look like Bigfoot or resemble Bigfoot enough to for people to think that all Bigfoot cloak and jump through portals and have telepathic abilities and I'm not telling anyone that they didn't experience that either, because I've talked to people and enough people who are completely sane, in my opinion, and say, "Hey, look, this is what I saw in my head. This is what I heard in my head," and that might be their only time they've ever experienced that. So I do think there are different entities out there. But
Right.
the Bigfoot I'm looking for, I believe is a flesh and blood.
Okay. So there's almost multiple, I guess, types of what people would consider Bigfoot, and some of them perhaps a little bit more on the entity side, and
Yeah,
some of them, oh, I like that too. That's good. Because it always seems to be kind of all over the place. You'll have conversations with people where they've seen them, or one one of my personal heroes is Jane Goodall, and she did an interview,
right.
right, where she talks about how she actually does believe that this could be a primate, and she's very open to the idea, and believes in Bigfoot, which is insane to me. So you get that kind of expertise, certainly on the primate side, and then you have people like we talked to, somebody who very much knows that they are interdimensional beings who just kind of blip in and out. So it's kind of interesting to think that they're completely separate beings.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And and to kind of touch on that too, is I think there's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes out in the woods that gets confused or gets lumped
Mhm.
in there with Bigfoot, whether it be the voices or the footsteps, or even stuff getting thrown automatically. Well, that was a Bigfoot that did that. I think there's,
Right.
you know, a lot probably happened in a lot of these woods and forests that we just don't know about. And we probably have paranormal stuff going on, whether it's from Native Americans or just regular everyday people that got you know uh, unalive in these woods or forests.
Right.
And, because I've heard different recordings. A friend of mine, he was doing he just had his recorder on. I wasn't say he was doing EVP. He wasn't doing an EVP. He had his recorder on in the woods, and he was standing next to what looked like a shelter,
Hmm.
um, like a stick structure. And he was standing next to it. He was just recording to see if he could pick anything up. And on his recorder, he hears this, psst, just like someone, psst, you know,
Hmm.
and his recorder picked it up. My other friend, he had his recorder out. He picked up a voice saying nobody. It was you could just hear it go nobody. And that was all he said.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think there's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes out in the woods that we just don't know about, or necessarily people just automatically assume that it's a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I would say absolutely there's so much more than we could ever possibly uncover in any of
yeah,
that.
and yeah. See, like Abe said, there's probably Indian burial grounds out there too.
Hmm. Yeah. It's amazing how much we're just sort of walking on every day. There's just all sorts of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I've actually walked out and I've uh, found a headstone and like a little makeshift gate, like
Mhm.
around a burial plot out in the middle of the woods.
Oh, sure.
You
I
know.
mean,
You know.
you think about like the history of our country, and there were one. I mean, you know, peoples that we just sort of mowed over and just buried everywhere anyway, or
Right.
trampled on the whatever burial grounds they had. But also, you just set up the graveyard in your backyard. If you lost somebody, if you lost kids, or
Mhm.
they're everywhere. We're just surrounded by dead people constantly.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Cause and like out in the San Mista Forest, years and years ago, it used to be like a mining camp, you know,
Hmm.
because there's iron ore there,
Okay.
and when they stopped doing that, to protect the forest and to preserve the forest, the mining camp, of course, went away. But it makes you wonder, man. These guys, they were rough and tough guys, and they didn't take anything from anybody, and you can only imagine what happened out there if someone was encroached on somebody else's claim.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you hear
Yeah,
stories about it all the time.
right. Yeah. Do you have any paranormal experiences yourself?
Outside of the feelings, there's only been one time that I saw something in the sky. I was down. I I go to Belize like a lot. So I was down there when I was probably about 14 or 15, and saw a what appeared to be something like a shooting star that was like a little bit bigger than an actual star, something bigger than what I've seen. And it stopped and then sort of curled around and then went in the other direction and then stopped short and then went in a completely different direction and then just disappeared. So
Hmm.
that's about the extent of my personal actually seeing something with my very own eyes that I can say, yes, 1,000% I saw that.
Hmm.
But, I get feelings from places.
Yeah. Yeah. About a year and a half ago, me and Walter were out and we are doing our Bigfoot thing, and he doesn't live too far from the Sam Houston, so it's always easier for me to meet him at his house, and that kind of becomes our little, base camp, his house. We went out, we put out trail cams and uh, our recorders, and we came back to his house. It was maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, And I was coming back home, and we were standing outside, and we looked up in the sky, and we saw these two lights that were going at each other like this. And when they got close, they stopped and they made a couple of circles, and then they took off in opposite directions.
I kind of really want that to be some sort of alien chicken.
Yeah, there you go.
Just to,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
But
incredible though.
and then one time I was it was maybe a good 20 years ago. I was fishing, maybe 25. I was fishing and in Galveston, and we were on the jetties, and the gentleman I was with, he was maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 feet to my right, and he says, "Hey Joe, look," and he points up to our left, and there's this freaking round craft right above us,
Gosh.
just coming so slowly. It was dark. It was, I don't know, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, full moon. Uh, no, not a cloud in the sky that night, and we saw this thing just perfect, maybe 200, 300 feet above us. And like I tell everybody, I think a professional baseball player could have hit it with a baseball. That's how close it was.
Wow.
And it was just a round disc, just a perfect round disc. We only saw the bottom of it
Mhm.
because it was like directly above us, and it took like 5 minutes for it to get out of sight. That's how slow it was going. But it was going so slow, so smooth,
Yeah,
no lights on it. But we got a really, really good look at it.
that's
And that was like
incredible.
the only time um, well, that was like my first time I saw like an actual craft.
Yeah.
And it's a question: have they had any Bigfoot sightings here near the Big Thicket area in East Texas? Tons of them, Sally, tons of them. And I know a few people that have had sightings out there actually. Yeah.
What was your first experience with an actual Bigfoot? Like, what
So
what got
many,
you?
many years ago, I was when I just started, right? I took my family out. Uh, this was another lifetime ago. I took my family out. We're going down this trail, and the person I was with, she's like, "Hey, look over there." She goes, "I saw something move." And so I looked up, and she was pointing to the trees, and I'm looking, and I see this red flash of fur go from one tree to the other. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, there it goes, right there, right there. She goes, no, not there, over here. She points, just a little bit to the left of where I saw. So me and my brother-in-law went to go check it out. And we came back, and she's like, no. She goes, whatever it was way taller than you and Patrick, because she goes, I couldn't even see you because of the brush was so tall. She goes, whatever it was, she goes, you and Patrick are like this, and this thing was like this, you know.
Oh, wow.
And then she said it was gray in color. And so I started talking to people, and when I started meeting people in the Bigfoot world, and talking about that area, and they're like, "Yeah, there's a big gray one in that area," and I was like, "Okay, that's pretty much some good confirmation for me."
Yeah.
That she saw what she saw, and that I saw what I saw. And then maybe this was probably about in 2016. I went out to the Sam Houston. I was by myself, which I never do, and I always tell people don't do it. I didn't have a
Right.
backpack. I didn't have a knife. I didn't even have water with me. I was, you know, kind of going through some rough times at that time, and
So
decided
you
this.
almost got your head popped off.
Yeah, I almost got my head popped off, but I'm walking, and I got my head down. I have on my baseball cap, and a rock bounces off the bill of my cap, you know. And I felt it. I'm like, what the hell was that? And when I saw it hit the ground, I saw the rock. I saw
Nope.
it was a rock that it hit the ground. But again, was that a Bigfoot or was that something paranormal?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that is the question, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
how many of these things can be credited to something else paranormal
Yeah.
and
And I
what is
actually
the actual Bigfoot?
further down that same area, maybe about a quarter mile, maybe half a mile at the most, is where I had a stick thrown at me. I mean, we'd seen the stick coming like that, and it flew right over our heads. So again, what threw the stick?
Right.
And at that time, I was with somebody else, and they were armed, and I was armed. So anybody, if there's a person out there throwing stuff at us, you're kind of asking for some trouble.
Yeah.
Um, but in that same area, I have found footprints. I found a 3-inch footprint and an 8-inch footprint. I mean, who would let their kids run around in the forest, in the creek, off trail, barefoot?
Yeah, I wouldn't, not that particular area. I mean,
Yeah,
I did a fair amount when I was a kid, but we're in Illinois, so there's not a lot of poisonous things
yeah,
or
and
dangerous dangerous large hogs.
Yeah, or snakes or spiders, and
Yeah. Yeah.
ticks. Jesus Christ, ticks are crazy, man.
Yeah. Well, we got those here, but
Yeah.
everything else we're okay with.
Yeah. And then maybe uh, this is maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. We were out at another location in the Sam Houston, and which is a popular area for Bigfooters. And we were hearing snaps and howls and these screams and seeing the trees shake.
Hmm.
And I focused on this one area because I kept seeing this silhouette, this just black silhouette doing, like leaning out like this behind, some trees. And I at nighttime your eyes can mess with you,
Oh
you know.
yeah, it's yeah, out in the pitch black.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I kept looking and looking, and I would look away and I would look back up, and I was with Walter and another friend of ours. And I didn't want to tell them anything, but they were like, "What are you looking at?" And I'm like, "I'm just looking." And I was just looking, and I would keep on seeing something like that, just kind of like lean out behind the trees, and I'm like, "What?" But it was just in that one area, and I was trying not to. I didn't want to get it in my head that there was something there,
Right.
because
Yeah.
because the power of suggestion, it is powerful. But I
Oh,
kept
yeah.
seeing it, and then shortly after that, when we started hearing the howls, um, we had our recorders in the truck. So Walter went to the truck to get the recorders out, and I stood up, and I'm like at the edge of the camp, and off to our right, maybe I don't know, 250 feet, 300 feet, there's a smaller pond. Well, on the other side of that pond, there was like it was a full moon that night too. And it's funny. It seemed like every time me and Walter go out, it's a full moon. But there was like a little opening, all the brush around the tree. I mean, around the pond. I could see across through that little opening, and I saw on the other side of the pond a little black figure go across.
Mhm.
So I told Walter, I said, "Hey, come back this way," because I just wanted to make sure uh, that it wasn't his shadow being cast all the way over there, which I know it couldn't have made it that far because all we had were these little bitty lamps that were just bright enough to light up the camp. And so he walked back, and nothing happened. But those are the only times I've ever. Well, there was another time I saw at that same area. We were camped out, and uh, my friend Armando, he had parked on the edge of the camp, and we heard something hit his truck, and it sounded like it hit from the side. It didn't sound like anything hit from the top. But we walked over there and we investigated his truck, and we walked across to that pond. And as he's going from right to the left, right when he got towards the middle of the pond, I saw these two big legs jump out of the light when the light hit it. You know, they were
Nope.
big. They were big hairy legs, big brown.
Big
Yeah,
hairy ladies.
yeah, a big hairy
Um,
lady out there. Yeah,
yeah, I mean those areas are, and especially at night. I was out in Arches last fall, and so we did all of the hiking and everything. Saw the Delicate Arch, like just gorgeous place, and went back at night to look at the stars, which was the first time that I learned that national parks are open like 24/7. Like you could just wander in there in the middle of the night, which is just phenomenal.
right.
But so out there to look at the stars, it's completely dark, completely black. And I had been, of course, as one does if one is interested in cryptids or anything paranormal, as soon as you enter into like Utah or get anywhere close to like Navajo territory, you start looking at, oh, I wonder where Skinwalker Ranch is, or how far away is that from me? And oh, I wonder what's going on with these skinwalkers. Can I run into anybody who can tell me some stories about it? So I've been doing all of this thinking on this subject and all of this research because I'm pretty sure I had the idea to cover that topic around that time, on Late Night Legends. And um so yeah, looking out the stars, pitch black outside, and I say, you know what, guys, I'm gonna walk a little bit away from everybody. I'm gonna walk away from like this little parking area, and I'm just gonna sort of commune, stare at the stars, spend a little time with my soul, you know. And I got man, I must have gotten like 150 feet away from everybody else, and I see just sort of this dark shadow sort of skitter across the ground, and it was larger, you know, maybe human-ish size, but just very low on the ground, and I noped right on out of there. Turned around and just fast walked back, because I didn't want to show fear or anything, but just, oh boy, just sped on back. It's that idea in your head that there is something, so you feel something, and then you see something, and it's automatic. Oh, that's what I'm
Right.
seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you pick up any kind of vibe from that?
Oh, it was like, get back to your people, like, immediately.
Oh, okay.
Be
Okay.
safe. Like, you are in danger and you need to go.
Hmm.
So it's very possible because, in that sort of lore and mythos of that, it's, if you talk about it quite on a regular basis, it's like an invitation
Yeah.
to be visited.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course I had been talking about it a great deal, but so who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows what I saw, or if it was just that dark feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think anyone that's in this kind of field, whether it's paranormal or UFOs, aliens, uh, or any kind of cryptid, once you start doing this, you kind of open yourself up, and it's like I said, it is like an invitation, you know.
Mhm.
I, over the last, I guess, man, 4 years, I've really had a lot of crazy stuff happen to me, and I think it's just because I've opened myself up so much, you know, and um, I I I'm not scared of it, you know.
Mhm.
It's kind of unnerving at time, but I like it. You know, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
you know.
no, that makes
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes 100% sense.
yeah.
One of my biggest fascinations outside of cryptids are of like sharks or the things that live in the oceans. Like, I'm sold on the idea of megalodon. It's one of my
Right,
favorite
yeah,
things in the whole wide world.
right.
But all of those sort of creepy things. But you know what? I sure do scuba dive, and I sure do scuba dive as much as I can in any kind of shark area, and really want to go see them. So it's like that little bit of fear, but also I need to see this. I need to see this.
Yeah, yeah. So what makes you think that there is a megalodon out there?
Oh,
And I'm not saying, you know.
the depths to which the ocean goes is
Right, yeah,
astounding. We have
right,
zero clue of what's in there. And then we get back into the idea of the caves again, and there's so much underwater that we just have no idea. No idea.
right,
And so many, we go back to also like um, the animals and the life that's been discovered or rediscovered,
mhm,
over the past 100 years. I mean, you look at the basking shark or like the six gill shark or the Greenland shark. I mean, those are all fairly recent discoveries in the
right.
grand scheme of things. So
Do you remember the story where they had tagged this great white?
yes,
And yeah, you know what, where I'm going with it, right? And
yes.
then it was like when they tracked it at one point, right before they lost signal, right?
Hmm.
It had moved from where it was at to like very low into the ocean, where it's
Yes.
too far for great whites, and the temperature had increased
Hmm.
where it should have decreased. So that kind of thought that this thing's inside something. It's in the belly of something,
Hmm.
right? And I think she was a female and she was rather big
Yes.
for a great white.
Yeah.
So for that to happen to this great white, they were like they had no idea what happened to it,
Yeah.
right?
So
You
you
know,
think
because
about,
all the
yeah, you think about something with no known natural predators, something that's like a very large female. And, when they talk about things being found at depths that they're not supposed to be at, like, they're physiologically not adapted to be at certain depths. Like, there's
right,
people underestimate the amount of pressure that happens when you're under, thousands of feet of water. And
right,
these animals, just like us, we're not meant to go past certain areas. It's
right,
impossible. So when
Right.
something's down further, that much further than it's supposed to be, come on, it's in something that is supposed to be down there.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, and especially with the temperature change, because
Hmm.
the temperature at that depth is much cooler,
Yes.
and it actually was the temperature went higher. So that
Yes.
kind of told me that it's inside something.
Yes.
Um, Yolanda has a question. She says, "Do you believe there is a world under the ocean?" What do you mean by world?
Oh, is that like
Civilizations or
or the Earth is the hollow Earth sort of theory? Is that?
I'm pretty sure like the Atlantis kind of a theory,
Hmm.
or even extraterrestrial underwater bases.
Hmm.
I I think there's extraterrestrials that use the water. I don't know if they live under there, but I think they go underwater just for cover at very least. Hollow Earth and
Oh,
dry
oh
land.
land. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know about that, because I'm kind of on the fence with that, and I know that sounds like a political answer, but that's just the truth, because again, there's no real proof of that other than you know some of these so-called whistleblowers, and when you listen to them talk, they kind of sound crazy, right? And
Yeah,
so,
for me it's the it's it's the actual like scientific proof that there is a core to the earth, that it's not hollow, that it is in fact solid, and it's going to take a lot more sciency words than I'm used to, but it definitely has to do with the way that pressure waves or sound waves travel through the crust. I had it explained to
right.
me at one point, but my brain kind of deletes a lot of science files, just
Mhm.
shoots them on out of there. But there is, I'm not inclined for the hollow Earth theory.
Yeah,
Whether there's caves, I mean, maybe I'll bring it back to the
yeah,
caves right now. But
yeah. I actually believe that there are caves. There might be ecosystems for that matter too, because
oh yeah.
um, you know, yeah, I think there's probably ecosystems we just don't know about, and whether or not there are actually dinosaurs or
Hmm.
stuff like that living, I don't know, but there's got to be creatures, whether insects or
Yeah.
reptiles or amphibious,
Well, I read something. It was just in my newsfeed, I think. Um, and I don't remember where, but there is a particular kind of crocodile right now that's smaller, that is starting to adapt to life in caves. So it's starting to, rely less on vision
Oh,
and
mm,
rely more on vibrations in the water. Like I just saw it and I wish I could remember details,
mm.
but
Well, I think it's in Vietnam where they found that cave system. It's like 6 miles long. Yeah,
yeah, the one
and it
that
it
was
yeah,
completely separated from anything and had its very own ecosystem.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's got to be tons more places than just those.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I like the thing about the crocodiles, the news story too, because it's a species that you're watching sort of evolve into something that can live in a completely different environment, like a cave. So who
Right.
knows?
Yeah. There's like I think it's Carlsbad, as a matter of fact. There's like an underwater lake there, or underground lake, or something like that, where they're supposed to have like a giant turtle under there. But I don't know how much to believe in that, because I mean, how much food can be down there for that giant turtle?
Right. Right. But
Yeah,
it does also, but take a look at the ocean again. You have massive creatures that live very deep where technically there shouldn't be a great deal of food, but or I mean just look at any like the humpback whale, right?
right.
Like eats a crap ton of very, very small pieces of
Yeah,
food. I think crap
yeah.
ton is a scientific term too. So
Yeah, I think so.
mhm,
I believe so.
mhm.
Well, cool beans, Jenny. We're already up on our hour. Went by pretty fast, like I
Okay.
said. So yeah. Do you have any Anything you want to add? Any kind of promote any of your channels or emails or contact information or
Yeah.
pages, whatever you want to talk
Yeah,
about.
I mean, absolutely. I would like to mention, obviously, the podcast that I am a part of, Late Night Legends. Like I said, we stream on Twitch, YouTube, all of that, Mondays at 9 p.m. Central. And then we release our episode on all of the streaming services, Spotify, Apple Podcast. On Thursdays, we've got a website. You can check out all of our pertinent information. It's late night legends dot boo, actually, which is nice. We also have the .com, but I like the .boo instead. Um, yeah, and all of my contact information can be found on there. All of our fun. Oh, I write a blog on there that is explores some various smaller creepy subjects or cryptids. Usually, I like to go with the cryptids, obviously, but and that's out every couple of weeks. So check that out.
Cool. And if you're not part of my pages, the Beyond the Woodline, join it and feel free to promote whatever you want to promote on there.
Awesome, thank you. I have. I
Yeah,
think I've
yeah,
joined
cool.
all of the pages. I think
Okay,
immediately I was on that.
okay, good, 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 good. Well, thank you for doing the show. I really do appreciate it, man. And like I said, if I could ever do anything for you, just hit me up, let me know, and I'll help you out as best I can.
Awesome.
Um, Everybody in the chat, thanks a lot for your participation. I always appreciate you guys. And oh, my Uncle James, happy birthday, Uncle James. Today's his birthday,
Happy
so
birthday, Uncle
happy birthday.
James.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Thank you. You'll appreciate that. Um, oh, you're okay. You can catch the
Great.
replay. It'll be on YouTube and Spotify. So just as long as you joined in and told us that, we're happy. But all right, guys, let me let you guys go and um, see you next Monday, guys. You guys have a great night, and again, thanks a lot so much for doing the show. And hold on, real